All right, let's talk about a critical safety directive that was just issued for the entire Airbus A350 fleet. We're going to break down exactly what EASA's Airworthiness Directive 2025-0238 means for operators and really dig into how a tiny bit of corrosion can spiral into a major, major problem. Here's what we're covering. We'll start with the root cause of the problem, then figure out exactly which aircraft are affected. After that, we'll get into what needs to be done and by when, look at the operational impact, and finally wrap up with how to stay compliant. Let's get right to it. So, what's all the fuss about? Let's dive right into the core safety issue that actually triggered this whole directive in the first place. At the very heart of this 80 is one simple word: corrosion. Now, this isn't just anywhere. It was specifically found on the blade bearings of the Ram Air Turbine, the rat, on some A350s. And you might be thinking, corrosion? How bad can it be? Well, as you're about to see, this seemingly small issue can escalate into a really serious safety concern fast. What's really interesting here is the chain reaction that EASA laid out. It all starts with something as simple as humidity, just moisture seeping into the rat module while it's stowed away. That moisture then causes these absolutely critical bearings to start corroding. As that corrosion builds up, it physically changes the angle of the rat blades. And here's the real kicker. If that rat has to be deployed in an emergency, that tiny change in blade angle can cause the turbine to spin way, way too fast, a really dangerous overspeed condition. And this is the bottom line, and I'm quoting directly from EASA here. This isn't just some mechanical quirk. That overspeed condition could lead to a partial or even a total loss of the emergency electrical power that the rat generates. And in a critical flight situation where you absolutely depend on that power, it could mean reduced control of the aircraft. That's serious. Okay, so we know the why. Now let's nail down the who and the what. Which specific aircraft and parts are we talking about here? Because getting this right is absolutely crucial for compliance. So, how wide is the net? As wide as it gets. This directive applies to the entire worldwide fleet of Airbus A350-941 and A350-1041 models. We're talking every single manufacturer's serial number. No exceptions. But the AD zeroes in on a very specific culprit. An affected part is a rat module with this particular part number. Now, the key thing to understand is the history of the part. It's only considered affected if it was deployed and then retracted using an old, now prohibited maintenance procedure. That procedure is what allowed the moisture to get in and start that whole corrosion chain reaction. So, to make this all manageable, EASA has split the fleet into two distinct categories. Group 1 aircraft are the ones that currently have one of these affected parts installed. They're the ones that require mandatory action. Group 2 aircraft, on the other hand, are in the clear for now, but, and this is important, they are still subject to prohibitions to make sure an affected part never gets installed on them in the future. Okay, this brings us to what is probably the most important section for any planning or maintenance team. What exactly do you have to do, and what's the deadline? Here's the number you need to remember: 4 years. For all of those aircraft in Group 1, operators have exactly 4 years from the effective date of this AD to get that affected rat module replaced. The clock is officially ticking on this one. Let's break down the 3 core mandates here. First, the big one for Group 1. Replace the affected part with a serviceable one within those 4 years. Second, a prohibition for the entire fleet. From now on, you cannot install a known affected part on any A350. And third, another fleet-wide ban. That old maintenance procedure that caused this whole mess, it's now officially off limits. And let me be perfectly clear on this one crucial detail. All of this replacement work must follow the exact instructions laid out in Airbus Service Bulletin A350-24-P149. There are no shortcuts, no workarounds, and absolutely no exceptions. So let's pull back from the nuts and bolts for a second. What does all of this actually mean for the bigger picture? For operations, for logistics, for management? Well, the operational impacts are pretty significant. First off, you're talking about scheduling aircraft downtime to get the part swapped out. Then there's the massive logistics puzzle of getting your hands on serviceable, non-affected rats. Of course, your maintenance programs will need to be updated. But really, the first and most critical step is a deep, deep dive into your fleet records to figure out which of your aircraft even are in Group 1 to begin with. Here's a helpful way for management to think about this. Visualizing your fleet status with a simple dashboard, something like this, can be a real game changer. It lets you see at a single glance how many aircraft are good to go, how many still need action, and, maybe most importantly, how many are still being reviewed. It really turns a complex logistical task into a clear, simple progress report. All right, let's wrap this all up with the final word on what it takes to make sure you are both safe and, just as importantly, legally compliant with this directive. There's really no gray area here. This quote from the regulation itself leaves zero room for interpretation. Complying with an airworthiness directive isn't a suggestion. It's a non-negotiable legal requirement for an aircraft to even be considered airworthy. So the final takeaway, the real action item here is this. Success depends on teamwork. Your camo, your planning department, your maintenance crews, and even your commercial teams all need to be in perfect sync to identify the right aircraft, source the parts, schedule the work, and get it all done inside that 4-year window. And of course, for all the official nitty-gritty details, make sure you reference the EASA AD document itself. And if you have any questions, here are the key contacts for both regulatory and technical issues. Thanks for watching and stay safe out there.